David.
Hello, Fred. Thank you for our guest for joining us. Fred, on February 2nd, we met with the French military affairs expert Loic Fana to discuss the possibility of a conflict in Ukraine. Now, 40 days later, the world has changed. We're not in a movie, even if it looks like one. For the world, this has been a tragedy. For Pentalog and for the IT services industry, this has been a very difficult time of difficult decisions. As the CEO of a global technology company, I know you've been in the hotspot, you've had to think quick, and you've had to improvise. I want to dive into those themes, but I'd like to begin, since our guests in the UK and the United States may be thinking about this, with something that took place yesterday. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to the US Congress. It's worth noting that he received 2 standing ovations from that body. He said the following, quote, "All American companies must leave their market," referring to Russia, "since it is flooded with our blood." Is he right? Have American corporations and British corporations done the right thing, or do they need to do more?
Well, great question indeed. It's difficult. It's difficult question. It's tough question. So there are so many answers. There are reasonable ones. Yeah, there are more emotional ones, of course. And we should look for a reason, indeed. I think there are tons of reasons to try to go fast in this, and so to treat promptly the problem. So I would probably say yes. Trying to leave all emotions. Even leaving all emotions, would probably say yes. With emotions, I would say yes, sure. In my view, it's not possible, and it's for a long time that it's not possible. We were not. There are different reasons why we were not in Ukraine and in Russia. But if we were not in Russia, it was because of all the different threats it was pushing to the world for too many years. I was fully aware of the problem in Crimea, first from 2008 approximately. Then I knew about the rest of Ukraine, and especially the eastern part of Ukraine, for a long time as well. And it was not possible for me. And I also, we have also Pentalog Moldova. So in Moldova, where you have this small separatist part at the eastern border of the country. So again, it was a direct threat from Russia on the territory, and I did not see that compatible with our way of making business, and I didn't want to step in the countries until it will stay the same rules, the same view of the world. We could not step in Russia really. So for Ukraine, it was exactly the opposite. It was simply that the place was too dangerous, and so this is why we had no resources in Ukraine and until that moment. Even if, of course, we were considering the country as a great platform, delivering high value to companies. So absolutely opposite reasons. One because it was simply seen as a risk, and the other one because it was the risk generator.
Fred, I understand you're just back from a visit to Brașov, Romania, where we have a significant delivery center. Could you describe the mood on the ground there? How are people feeling?
Yeah, you're right to ask about Romania, because Romania is very close to Moldova, as a border with Ukraine. It has a border with Ukraine, with Moldova, and it has also all that part on the southwest of Ukraine and northeast of Romania, where you have the Delta of Danube, etc., etc. There are islands there, which are sometimes in dispute between Ukraine and Romania. So if the Russian army comes down to the region of Odessa, it means that clearly the tanks will be extremely close to Romania. Or if they come on the border, the north border is fully Ukraine, and so the country as a former communist country knows about the pressure Russia can make on its satellites. So Romania has never been a republic of the USSR, but it was but a satellite country, yes, and they perfectly know what are the consequences on the policy. The policy of Russia on its satellites was very clear: take as much as they can. As they could, and they are extremely afraid of seeing again Russia at its doors. Really, there is in Romania a real threat, even if the country is in NATO. My own country, France, is in NATO, but we don't have the same feeling because we have never been a satellite country of the Soviet Union.
Fred, you mentioned NATO. NATO troops, American troops, are currently streaming into Romania and other countries such as Poland by the thousands and soon the tens of thousands. When you were in the country, did you see any signs of that? Is it clear? Is there a feeling of a military buildup?
Well, I went 2 times since the invasion. I went 2 times to Romania, and at the end of my first stay, I remember seeing a very big plane of I think it was of the Royal Air Force, taking civilians on the tarmac of the Bucharest airport. It was really a weird vision. So the direct presence of the NATO forces, no, you don't see, because they are in different bases of the territory, and you don't really see them in Bucharest. You don't see them, let me say. But it's but we know they are here. We know that there are some days there are over 150 fighter jets in the sky of Eastern Europe, over the Black Sea, etc. It's really a very particular situation. Armed jet fighters. So it's extremely dangerous at the end of the day. And people know that.
Considering our footprint in that region, can you tell me a little bit about what the feeling is in Moldova? How are our teams managing, and how is our company and how are other companies reacting to the situation?
Yeah, so it's good to compare indeed people of Western Europe with people in Romania, Poland, for instance, and people in Moldova, because they are the most exposed, and they have they start to feel the breath of the monster over their neck, and so yes, it's really a good question. People there, a big part of the people are really afraid, are feeling a strong pressure in their life. Have the feeling that their quality of life is today threatened by those conditions, and some of them have already left the country. We propose to people of our company, as they were experiencing that threat. We propose to those in need for that, who didn't feel comfortable anymore under this pressure, remembering also, as Moldova is a former Republic of USSR, they remember also the shellings on Grozny, on things like that. They have tons of friends in Ukraine, relatives in Ukraine. Families are very often Moldo-Ukrainian. And so lots of them knowing that Moldova wouldn't have the military means to answer any attack from Russia, thought that they maybe should leave the country, and but actually very few of them. And in the end of the day, very few of them. But we organized the help for those in need for that, and we help about 30 families relocated so far. In the first moment, about 60 families decided to go to Romania to seize the option we gave them, and in a second time, about a half decided to come back, seeing that what they were. What they were afraid of, I mean, seeing Russia crossing the border with Moldova was not happening, and that the conflict was really like stuck in Ukraine. Some of them started to think that go back to their homes.
Speaking of Ukraine, some of our colleagues in the industry, other companies that we work alongside of in the IT space, I think of EPAM, for instance, have significant footprints in Ukraine.
Yeah.
How do we measure their response, and how do you see this evolving in terms of the larger IT services market?
Yeah, so I would be very uncomfortable to give names, and I won't drop any names. Of course, it wouldn't be elegant. But I think you had all the graduation of reaction from the best to the worst. So of course there are companies in that space, in that area of the world, which were located in Ukraine, in Russia, and in Belarus, for instance, but having their origins or in Russia, but not in Ukraine, not directly in Ukraine, but having something in Ukraine. So for those companies, it was extremely complex because their headquarters were in Russia. The majority of the management was Russian, for instance, or so for them, I can imagine it was particularly hard to manage such situation. But I think the best decision to make was to or release the people and give them the ability to go fighting, or leave the country if they needed. And I think that they should have helped. Anyone should have helped relocating its resources in another country in such case. And the best of them, this is what they did. They did exactly what we did, we offered to our Moldovan people. The best companies did simply the same thing, proposing to people to fly to Turkey, for instance, to other countries and establish there in a weekend a new life, and lots of them did that, and it was great. In my view, the situation of those companies is today is really terrible. Anyone having a LinkedIn account and knowing some names of those companies can see the impact. It's visible today. It's visible today on not a LinkedIn account. I wanted to say a premium one, a premium account on LinkedIn. You can have all the stats, all the figures for recruiting of companies, and lots of them they recruited zero in March, for instance. You have companies having tens of thousands of people, for instance, or thousands of people, and recruiting absolutely no one in March. So so they were obviously engaged with their customers into large delivery operations, with customer pushing to have more resources. You know the stuff, and being absolutely unable to deliver anything at this moment. But I think it wasn't their problem at this moment. Their problem was to protect their resources and find a new location to establish their teams and restart before restarting operations. But I can imagine that it's probably extremely hard, and that there will be also a financial impact on them. It's too much. It's really too much.
We've heard a lot of stories of tech companies in Europe, in Ukraine, around the world, Facebook, Google, American companies as well, doing everything they can to safeguard their people and to express their dissatisfaction with the current situation. Facebook, for instance, was in the news earlier for altering its moderation policies to allow for the expression of very strong discontent. Even calls for violence, for instance, they had a bit of controversy related to the situation. What else can tech companies do?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What else can tech companies do besides protect their people and
I'm sorry, the communication is not great. The quality of the communication is not great. So you ask me what could tech companies could do, what else they could do to protect people, or
to protect people and to help respond to the situation.
And respond to the situation. Okay. Well, I think companies in general, companies at this moment they have companies having resources in those areas. They probably have to stop the operation from Belarus and from Russia. This is the first thing. For those who have not yet stopped for any reason, I think they should stop. It's also from a moral point of view. In my view, it's from a moral perspective as well that they should stop that. And because it's the best support they also can, because otherwise it's contributing in a way. It's contributing in a way. I'm sure it's not done on purpose. It's not with that state of mind of being a supporter, of course, of Putin. It's absolutely sure. But things need to be clear. And stopping that is in my view absolutely essential. Helping all resources relocating from there are different possibilities. So for companies, for instance, having operations in Ukraine and having people being refugees into different places, it could be to drive them to convince those people they need to find back a job. So maybe it's possible to help them find a company outside Ukraine and being able to restart operation as soon as possible from where they are. It could be also with freelancing status. It's possible to do that with freelancing status since they are Ukrainian. If they are Russian and they have left the country, it's possible as well. They can work with them on freelancing, because those people, we should think also to those people leaving Russia, going to Georgia, going to Finland, and those people are courageous to leave such place. Probably there are people in their family not understanding them, and they need support. They need strong support as well. We are all also extremely inspired by those people being very courageous in Russia. I think of that journalist. We also on the networks. But simply, there are people saying, no, I don't want to contribute in this regime, and so leaving and deciding to leave the country. Those ones should be helped to find job again when they leave. They need support. It's extremely difficult for them to get money, to get paid. So they need new bank accounts. They need to arrive in a place accepting them. It's not so easy. So I think companies should help them. Should have the kind of people leaving Russia, leaving Belarus. We receive today some candidates coming from Russia and Belarus. Really, there are lots of people leaving Russia. Lots of them.
And the journalist, and she's facing a 15-year potential imprisonment under the new Russian patriotism law, which makes it against the law.
And when you asked me also on what company should do, I think it was it's also about risk here. I think they should be some of them should be better in their should try to be better in their risk assessment before having all their engineering, for instance, into one place which was really in a conflict zone. Ukraine was clear for me from 2008, as I said earlier that Crimea was a problem, and the whole Ukraine was in danger. I knew it for many years. It was possible. That doesn't mean it was not possible to work there. Of course it was, and it was necessary to work with them. But maybe balancing, I think of those who have not balanced, were in such dangerous situation and have not balanced that with something else. So so there are companies which were only in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, for instance, and of course the result is terrible today. So indeed, it's important today, I think, to try to find which countries. There are countries where you can work. All the countries which are protected by the NATO shield first. So it's all countries in Eastern Europe, of the western part of Eastern Europe, I should say. So it's Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Poland, the western countries of Europe as well, and also maybe some country which are more neutral, which have the reputation of neutral countries, like Moldova is a neutral country, for instance, and it is possible to work there. But it's plenty of them. Sweden is a neutral country. You have tons of in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, you have countries countries having a reputation of neutrality that you can use to establish your R&D facilities and working very well. And you won't have these problems. Same, you can also go in. There are some possibilities in Asia. I mean, India is neutral in this conflict, and lots of others.
And Pentalog has operations in Latin America, for instance.
Yeah, of course. And sorry to forget Latin America. Indeed, we are indeed in Mexico, and Mexico is definitely also a right place to establish to establish operations. I was focusing, I'm sorry, on Europe, as you. That's true that the situation in Ukraine is so that really takes you and but of course all operations in Latin America from north to south are extremely valuable today. It's good strategy, so you can mix. So, for instance, and those days we have customers mixing some Eastern Europe countries like Romania, protected by NATO, together with Mexico. We have customers doing that, and it's really the right mix at the moment. It's probably the best mix at the moment. We have others mixing Eastern Europe with Vietnam. So it's possible to do all those combination. But since your operations start to be large, both the pandemic first and then this situation with the war in Ukraine simply show that today programming is like a commodity for companies. For digital companies, it's as essential as water for human. You need to, if you're a digital company, you need to develop constantly. You cannot not even freeze. You cannot even freeze your software development activities. You need to keep them up constantly, and so as long as the pandemic it's probably one of the lessons of the pandemic to understand that it's clearly a commodity in a digital world. Programming is a commodity that you cannot stop. So that said, it means that you cannot have all your developers with you in Cupertino because there could be an earthquake. It's not good to have all your developers with you in Mexico. There could be an earthquake as well, or something else. There could be a war in Ukraine. There could be a pandemic in Asia, etc., etc. So you need to spread, to balance your teams, to work in different time zones also, and that will also help you. There will be a great benefit of internationalization of your team, and which from a cultural point of view is essential.
Fred, you mentioned COVID, and I know that you're a keen watcher of global risk. It's something you think about a lot. And of course, the COVID pandemic doesn't appear to be done with us just yet. We have some signs of potentially a new variant. It's unclear how concerned we should be just yet. But I wonder if you can pull back a little bit from the day-to-day view of this and give us your perspective on the differences between the Ukraine crisis and the COVID crisis and how you see potentially the two interacting with each other.
Yeah, it's a big one because, both of them are a blast at the beginning. And in many ways, the blast of the COVID pandemic was much stronger. You remember, everything stopped, which is not the case today. In another life I was doing recently, just before actually in France, I've been asked the same question. I said, have the impression really from my side that if the conflict in Ukraine stays in the borders of Ukraine, whatever is the intensity inside, that will in some months we will go back to business as usual. There will be maybe a drop with the growth of maybe 0.5 point or something, 1 point maybe, but that will be again in the same will be on the same way again, and we'll go back to our business. The pandemic was something different. It was really a global blast, and for a long time, and it was something worldwide, affecting absolutely everyone on Earth, almost in the same moment. That was the particularity of that crisis. So that's first of all, it's a big difference in terms of complexity at the origin of the crisis. Everyone being touched almost instantly by something in less than a month. It was globally on Earth. Is something that we didn't know. Probably we never widespread so quickly something on Earth, and it was making a big difference in the way to analyze this pandemic compared to others. That said, we should probably admit that the fact it came so fast over the whole planet was sort of a simplification also, because we were all touched at the same moment. We all had to make reactions from the same moment. We all adopted the same reactions. So the virus was keeping its complexity that we didn't know very well, and how it will evolve, the mutations and so on. We didn't know about that. But everything was coming at the same time in all countries. So we started with something which was a blast, and that turned into something finally very linear, because we had helicopter money everywhere. So the situation was coming from something absolutely unpredictable day one to something extremely predictable end of course. So here it's very different, because we know that majority of countries have no more the possibility of making any helicopter money. We know that the Federal Reserve has now entered a period of increasing of the rates of its rates. It's the same in Europe. Yeah, it's the same now in Europe, probably with a lower impact, but it's a bit of the same thing in Europe at this moment. So we now see that probably the complexity in the economy is coming back. We don't have anymore all those policies very aligned together at the same time. We had the governance. At the moment, it was not decided, but it was exactly as if we had a global governance of the planet. Today it's very different. Today it's now very different. We have the banks moving in different directions. We have a war in the middle. We don't know. We know that it's possible to play in the economy with the war. We know that the war will start crisis. We'll start a group of crisis. We have the crisis as itself, and then crisis economic coming from the war because of the raw materials, both food, for instance, starting from food. There will be terrible problems with food very soon, because Ukraine and Russia are essential for the Middle East, for Africa. And there will be terrible problems, and that will generate probably new conflicts in Africa, maybe in the Middle East. We don't know. So we don't know what are the outcomes of that crisis, as well as we don't know what will be exactly the impact with the raw materials and so on. What we can understand from now is that we entered something that will have lots of impacts. And with countries entering a real war economy, some others being in business as usual. So the predictability is much lower than it was at this time. So for me, it's completely different. The algorithm of the virus, even unknown, we knew that a coronavirus like this one, is generally programmed to be less and less lethal and more contagious. So we didn't know exactly how. But this is approximately what has happened, right?
Fred, we have a question from a LinkedIn user who wants to know your perspective on whether or not we're likely to see a global economic slowdown.
If I see, I'm sorry, still have cuts. So what is my view on potential economic slowdown?
Will there be an economic slowdown as a result of the crisis?
Probably yes. I don't know how many points, how many GDP points for, and it also depends on the zone you're talking from. But anyway, we clearly know already that such impact on the oil and gas industry will have repercussions on the economy. Surely, we know. I was talking on the raw materials, things that there are equipments where you have palladium, for instance, and palladium is comes only on Earth from Russia. So the stocks won't last forever, and we know that everything, having palladium, for instance, in its composition, we'll see its price rising like crazy. So there will be inflation, and that inflation will finally impact the growth. And we know also, look, we had the interest rates being raised already by the Fed, and now by the Bank of England, and now by the Central Bank of Europe. So it's going to be a general thing, and that will slow down the economy, obviously. And we can now expect even higher increases on the rates than before, because the inflation we had before and the adaptation of the rates was kind of, it was mild. Compared to the inflation we used to have at the end of WW2 and until the 70s, it was really nothing, and life was very cool at the time, right? So probably we were progressively adapting. We were planning to adapt to inflation, but now because of a problem on raw materials, it was already because of a potential crisis on raw materials that the central banks decided to adapt. But now with the war, we know that the tensions on the raw materials will be much higher, plus the oil and gas, plus the food. I'm sure we are only at the beginning of the growth of rates.
Fred, you mentioned obviously food. Ukraine and Russia, major suppliers of wheat, for instance.
Yeah.
You mentioned raw materials, palladium, other heavy metals, and components coming from Russia.
Yeah, platinum. Yeah, platinum is mostly come from Russia. Yeah.
We saw it during the crisis, the COVID crisis. Previously, what happened? Ship supply was interrupted, and the ripple effects. So, is what you're saying that we're going to see these similar kinds of effects of a chokehold in the supply chain manifesting in the broader economy?
Yeah, it's very possible. We already start to see in Western Europe, but I think it's going to be the case as well very soon in the US if it is not. But we start to see factories closing. There will be more and more in the coming weeks, and there will be ripple effects. Yeah. It's exactly that. Imagine the impact of a food crisis in Africa. Generally, it results very quickly into a new conflict. So we were very happy. We could be very happy of the end of the 20th century and beginning. I'm sorry, I'm maybe an optimistic, but look, people were not starving for food anywhere not anywhere, but we had never been in so positive, in so good condition about food on that planet until the last years. It's in the last years, in the very last years, that we started to see those problems with food again.
Food insecurity being addressed on a global level in a way it
Yeah.
hadn't been before.
And with a global insecurity coming up, and now with we add war on that will reduce the supply of Russia and Ukraine to those countries. So it's absolutely obvious that there will be a conflict generated as ripple effect. Yeah.
Fred, you mentioned the post-war period, the end of World War II. It seems like a good moment to think about the European and American reaction. President Biden will travel next week to Brussels. He'll attend NATO meetings and other EU meetings. As a European, from a European perspective, what thoughts do you have on seeing this resurgence, this reawakening of the Western alliance?
I think people were tired. I think people were tired. It was old things. They didn't understand why they were there, why they were paying for it. and now Putin helped us understand why. So I think, so in my view, Putin did exactly the opposite of what he wanted. There are two big questions today on the table. One is indeed it's not the weakening of NATO, it's the strengthening of NATO. And also Europeans, I think they have realized that they have to also do something on their own. It looks very much like it was. I know it, in Eastern Europe, it was appreciated, the fact of seeing Italian planes and the French carrier having operations in the Black Sea. Not the ship itself, but the planes coming over the Black Sea. It was very much appreciated by people, and it helped. And I think it has helped in a way. Pitching a conversation for a common project of defense in Europe. So both of them are extremely interesting. The moral reinforcement of NATO, or also seeing something coming from European. I don't care very much. I'm not a politician, but I hope there will be reactions coming from the Europeans. Europeans need to understand that they have to own their defense. They have to own their defense. They cannot rely forever on someone else. So basically, historically, in Europe, you had two countries really taking their defense. It was UK and France. Now UK is not part of EU anymore, but still part of the NATO. All the other countries being part of NATO. So, but you only have two countries which were really kind of ready for operations and things like that at any time. But Germany is really back on the scene. The decisions they made recently to raise their military budget, like by doubling. I think it's close to doubling.
A minimum of 2% of the economy, 2% of the spending.
Yeah, from 1 to 2 or something like that. Yeah. So it's going to be it's really a game changer. It's really a game changer in Europe. It's a big decision. It means that very soon we will have not 2 but 3 armies really being on the highest standards in Europe. Plus, and of course, what has happened now will also move the Polish government, the Romanian government, all of them. They now understand that they cannot just say, okay, we are protected by the US. They say by NATO, but in their mind, it was just the US. And they now see with the operations they have that it's really combined with the Europeans, and that the Europeans are really sending means in the Baltic Sea, on the Black Sea, that there are planes patrolling everywhere, up to 150 some days in the sky. So it's really a very big moment, I think, for Europe to understand that it's time for something. I don't know what should be the framework for it. If it's more NATO, if it's more EU. If you ask me, I think it's time for EU to grow a bit, to grow in unity, and that a defense project could be something interesting for that.
Fred, you mentioned European politics. As a French company, it seems interesting to look at the engagement of your president, Emmanuel Macron. He actively engaged Vladimir Putin. He seems to have had several conversations with him. I don't know if he's still talking to him. Do you think he regrets his intervention? Do you think he feels that it succeeded in any way?
Ask him. I don't know. No, I think it's important to every time give a place for diplomacy. My conviction as it's not as a president of any republic, but more as a CEO. I think we have to be negotiators every time. Negotiation saves lives, and we should not forget that. but there are things we can negotiate, some things we cannot negotiate. So I don't know what's his mind about that, but try is in his role when he tries.
Keeping the door open is always the
Yeah,
job.
yeah.
Listening is always important.
It's not because your door is open that you cannot be harsh on something. You can do both. You can do both, but keeping the door open um, leaves every time a chance. And there are many doors. The problem is that there are many doors open around Putin. There is one with China. There is one with Israel. There is one with Germany. There is one with France. But at the end of the day, indeed, it doesn't look to take any of them. But in my view, it's preferable, and especially as the whatever is the level of sanctions, or even if we would talk of military options, which is not on the table, of course. Keeping a door open, I think, is every time favorable to life.
Well, that's a good CEO insight. Going into the final few minutes, I'd like to ask what you think, or what your thoughts are on what kind of off ramp there may be for the current situation in Ukraine, and what signs you'll be looking for over the next few days, weeks.
Signs for sorry, still this problem of many cuts.
We're having some sound difficulty, so I apologize to the viewers. Fred, what type of off ramps, what kind of exits do you think there could be from the Ukraine crisis, and what types of signs will you look for over the next few days to see what may be coming?
Yeah, clearly we can see that sometime, for instance, I think it's already more than a week ago. The Kremlin said that they could reduce their expectations on the demilitarization of Ukraine. That they could be happy with only getting the eastern part, the eastern border, and so on. But actually, it was just moves. It was just gesticulations to save time, to keep the pressure, and giving signs, and precisely giving signs to maybe stop on the sanctions on the other side, saying, okay, look, I'm here, I can discuss, look, listen to me, but at the same time keeping bombing. So as long as they keep the shellings every day like that, I don't know what could be the signs we could expect. So in my view, probably the real negotiation, we will see the impact of the negotiation when the shellings will start reducing. I'm not saying nothing, but when they will start, bomb some different kinds of areas, keeping the pressure, but at a lower level. We need to see the level reducing to maybe give the interpretation that something is calming down, that things are calming down.
Fred, speaking of pressure on Russia, we have a question from the audience, and thank you for that. Questioning whether or not, in your view, sanctions will actually work. Does it create the risk of turning Russia into a more dangerous country?
It's a tough question. I think they were prepared for it. In my view, Russians were probably more prepared than we imagine. So we tried to see things as we wish them. We do lots of wishful thinking with that, and I think that they were ready for lots of things. Maybe not to all what we did at the end of the day, and so my answer is yes. My answer is yes, because otherwise you cannot negotiate. I look back to the question on negotiation. If you only can keep your door open if at the same time you have pressure. So I would keep the pressure and probably push on, and probably keep on pushing. I think Zelensky was very much right when he asked to sanctions all the politicians of of Moscow is probably right with that. Because we need to push the pressure around Putin. There are probably people around him which made business in their lives which are not happy to see it vanishing. And I think yeah, those people should be part of the sanctions, all of them, all the people being at the parliament, all ministers. I think all ministers, it's already the case. But I think so. I think so. And sanctions are the only mean that we have at the end of the day. We have to admit that. The other ones, it looks we don't want to engage them.
Well, Fred, thank you for that answer. And with that question, our time is up. This Pentalive has concluded. Thank you so much for attending. Look forward to future Pentalives as the situation evolves. And be safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.